Omicron, which is the name the World Health Organization has given to the new COVID-19 virus variant that has been recently identified in South Africa. And today we're going to try to discuss 10 questions and answers, or partial answers, because for some of them the answers are not available, or they are not, they are only partial. And let's get into it. So the first issue is a clarification on nomenclature, on naming. Earlier today, the World Health Organization has come out and called this variant Omicron. There was some initial confusion that's going to be called new. It's actually Omicron, and it's a variant that has a number of mutations. And this covers the second question, and that is, where did it originate? Well, it originated in Africa, in the southern part of Africa. It's actually not from South Africa. The first case is thought to have happened in Botswana on November 11th. This is an article detailing that origin of the virus. But as I was saying, the World Health Organization has come up today and named it Omicron. And the technical name is B11529. That counts less. Suffices to say that this designation of B11529 indicates the fact that this variant has a number of mutations. It's riddled with mutations, 30 of which, or 32 to be precise, are in the spike protein region, in that protein that the virus uses to latch onto cells in our body and to infect them. So it's a highly mutated variant, as I said, and it appears that the way these mutations and the location of these mutations is such that it conveys not only a high infectiousness, but it raises also serious concerns about the possibility of this variant exhibiting some immune escape, being resistant to vaccines. So the number 3 question is, how infectious is this thing? Well, the jury is out to some extent, but some have come forward and said that they think this variant is 500% more infectious than Delta. Remember, Delta was about 60% more infectious than other variants. So this being 500% more raises some serious concerns. No wonder the stock market plummeted today. It raises some serious concerns about the spread of this variant and the fact that it's going to be so much more infectious than Delta. We didn't think that would be possible. Here it is, and we'll see what the next few weeks bring. But again, it sounds like it's going to be a lot more infectious. And if you look at the number of new cases per million in Africa, in South Africa, that is, because right now, even though it originated in Botswana, this virus seems to be spreading primarily in an area of South Africa where they have around Johannesburg. And they've seen a spike in cases here. This little uptick here that you see doesn't seem to be amounting to much right now, but the rate of multiplication of this strain and the fact that it's taking over and replacing the Delta variant is what's concerning these people there. Although, having said that, I think we have to bear in mind that the Delta wave in South Africa was pretty much done before this happened. So it's not like there was a lot of Delta and this thing is out-competing it. It's really coming in a separate wave, apparently, or beginning to show as if it's going to be a separate wave and becoming the dominant variant there. And there's been a lot of concern among the countries of the world, and all kinds of measures have been taken today. I'm not going to go into those right now. I think the more important question, number 4 question for us in the list of 10 that I'm addressing today is, how is this going to be resistant to the current vaccines? And the answer to this, we really don't know. So I think people who rush to go one way or another would do better to be more cautious right now in this respect, because we really don't know. Yes, there are some theoretical modeling done based on the location of those mutations, and we have become advanced enough in modeling with computers and with the shape of the protein based on what building blocks you put in a certain place with mutating the protein, so as to predict how the shape of that spike protein will change with all these mutations. That can be done, and in fact there are groups of researchers very actively involved in modeling that right now, both in the United States and elsewhere, to try to predict, based on the final shape of the spike protein, how effective or less effective the vaccines and the antibodies that are developed through natural infection to previous variants or through vaccination. The issue is really the same. It's not going to be one much better than the other, unfortunately, where we would see how those antibodies are still hopefully able to latch onto the spike protein and neutralize it, hopefully, or not. And if it's not, then it's going to be an immune escape. And here I want to also make a point, and that is, even though we're going to see a certain degree of immune escape from vaccines, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the vaccination or previous infection is going to be worthless in terms of protection, because these things go on a continuum from 0 to 100%. So you could see a drop of 50% or even 60-70% of protection, but you are still going to see, my prediction is that we are still going to see some protection left from previous infection, from previous vaccination, if for nothing else, for the fact that previous contact with the virus activates the immune system, or with a vaccine for that matter also, activates our immune system in ways that are much more encompassing than making specific antibodies to a variant. There is T-cell activations and all of that. So those things are going to be helpful. To what extent, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And here we go to the next question, which is related to this one, and that is number 5. How much resistance are we going to see against other therapeutic agents? Is this variant going to be resistant to monoclonal antibodies? Well, if it's going to be escaping antibodies from the vaccine, then yes, we are going to most likely see some resistance to monoclonal antibodies too, and those guys will have to upgrade their formula for it. As far as medications, which so far haven't been approved yet, but I think this will most likely give the FDA here in the US and similar agencies around the world a new sense of urgency to approve the new meds that Merck and Pfizer, the Molnupiravir and the Paxlovid, to bring them on the market, and hopefully at an affordable price everywhere, so people who get sick with this, if it's going to mean a more serious disease, we'll talk about that in a moment, will have access to it. And here we can go directly to the next question, number 6, and that is, how serious is going to be this new COVID-19 or COVID-22 or COVID 2.0, however we're going to name it, if it's going to be a new variant significant enough that the virus will also behave and look like a new virus. Is the disease going to be more serious or not compared to the previous disease? And here my prediction is that we are not going to see a much more serious case of COVID-19, but again, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So then the next logical question is, when will we see or know more? Well, we estimate the best estimates are then the next 3-4 weeks, maybe by Christmas, by the new year, we'll know a lot more about this, and we'll be in a much better position to make decisions and recommendations. Another question that is related to this whole thing is that of vaccine equity. See, there have been voices, and I think very appropriately so in recent months, making the case that instead of piling boosters on people who have already been vaccinated in the United States and in the Western world, whereas in Africa we have abysmal rates of vaccination. Like even in South Africa, who actually, interestingly enough, talking about the origin of this virus and the context in which it has appeared, in South Africa, I'm going to show you here in a moment, you have right now, you have about 25% of people vaccinated in that country, of all their population. But they say they have enough vaccine to cover the whole population. It's not like they have a shortage of vaccine doses like they do in many other places in Africa. Is rather than the vaccine hesitancy among the South African population so high that people just don't go for the vaccine. And that's not unique to them, unfortunately. But there are many other places in Africa and other poor countries in Africa and elsewhere who don't have access to vaccine, period. So again, there have been voices making the case that instead of making plans for boosting the population that has already been vaccinated in Western countries, we would be better off if we would spread that initial vaccination strategy across the globe to reduce the opportunity for the virus to mutate and develop new variants. It's kind of a little bit late to go back and do that right now. Hopefully we'll see a more coherent strategy going forward in that respect. We know as much that Moderna has come up today, and they have laid out a three-pronged strategy. You can read it on their press release regarding this Omicron specific vaccine candidate, that they are putting together a booster candidate specific to the Omicron variant. How long that would take before it becomes available? Estimates, and that's another question number 8, I believe. That depends on each company. The estimates here in the United States that it may take around 100 days for Pfizer or for Moderna or maybe Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson is going to be a little bit harder, I think. But for the mRNA vaccine companies, it's estimated, I think the New York Times came up today with an article where they said it's most likely it'll take them 100 days to upgrade the formula and have a booster available that will include the Omicron sequence or will be targeted specifically for that. Again, if it turns out to be as bad as we think or we fear it will be. Number 9, will this cause a new pandemic? Well, it very much depends on whether these initial concerns and fears in terms of how infectious it is and how severe the disease that it can cause and how much immune escape or vaccine escape we're going to see. If our worst fears materialize and this turns out to be a bad case scenario, and this brings me to number 10, what if the worst case scenario plays out? Well, the worst case scenario would be something like this behaves like a new virus, like a new COVID-19 virus on steroids. It's much more infectious, it doesn't react to previous immunization, and it causes a more severe disease. If those three things play out in this fashion, then yes, there is a good chance that we're going to see another big wave of SARS-CoV-2 infections around the world. It's very likely in that scenario, again, that all these measures that people are taking with blocking flights from a certain part of the country or even lockdowns will actually not work, because if the infectiousness of this virus is 500% worse than Delta, those measures will not work, will not be sufficient. Certainly masking would be necessary, distancing would be necessary, but at the end of the day, the virus will spread like fire in such a scenario, and we will witness another big, turmoil in the world with another round of vaccinations and everything involved with that. But that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is the opposite, where this turns out to be a false alarm, like I put on the title of this video, where we find that actually vaccines still work, maybe not to 100%, but to a good extent. We discover that the severity of the disease is not that bad, and there are early indications in South Africa that may be the case, in the sense that most of the cases with this variant appear to happen in younger people who are unvaccinated, and it doesn't seem to cause a catastrophic severe case of disease. So again, it's very early data, we'll wait and see, but so far early indications are somewhat reassuring in that respect. And so, and maybe the infectiousness is not that bad after all. We'll have to see again. So in the best case scenario, this turns out to be a false alarm and it fizzles out and we hopefully can return to a more normal life sooner. What do I think the most likely scenario will be? It's probably going to be in between these two extremes. How much closer to one or the other, I don't know. I hope it's closer to the milder case scenario, and I really hope and pray so. But again, nobody really knows. Well, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this, how you are going to react to this, and what else you'd like me to address in future episodes. Until then, my friend, you stay healthy, you stay wise, and let's hope and pray Omicron is more of a false alarm than a pandemic 2.0. You take care.